Hey everyone, I wanted to share with you a particular use case, really practical example of a task system that has a little bit more complexity than just assign it to a person, give it a due date, give it a priority, kind of that's it. So, that's often where people start, but pretty quickly you realize, it'd be great if we could automate some of this. Then when you start automating it, you realize, we want it partly automated, but we also have a kind of unique way of doing it. So this is a good example of that. Client I'm working with at the moment, they run this great construction business, and they have like a big series of tasks that happens through different phases in their projects. And so when we were working on it yesterday, one of the things they said is, look, we want to be able to automatically create a whole series of tasks. And we want to be able to set how many days after that task is created, it's due. And then we also want to be able to set the priority level in an automated way. So that's okay. But then they said, but sometimes we need to be able to override that. So we want it partly automated, but then partly not. And so this is in Notion how you would go about doing that. So don't worry about all these first ones, but let's have a look at, we've got a priority, a due date, an automatic priority, an automatic due date, and then these two properties that are going to give us the ability to set the days until it's due. So that's based on the creation date, and set when the priority gets upgraded. So key to this working is when the automation runs to create the task, it sets the creation date, and then the priority and the due date properties, these will overwrite whatever it is in here. So oftentimes they won't get used, but this is the same task system because we just have one task system across the whole workspace that people put their own individual tasks in. And of course, none of that's got anything to do with the automation. So let me show you how it works. We have the create date. Let's say it gets created today. And then we have a number of days until it's due. So you can see I've got 14 in there, and it's the 27th of July. And so it pushes it forward to the August 10. And so that's dynamic. That changes, just based on this figure. And so that gets built into the automation that we set, hey, it's this task, it's going to take this long. And then we have an automated priority. So if I just jump into the formula here for the due date before we look at the priority, I've just said, if there's anything in the days until due property, then do this. Look at the due date. If the due date's full, use that. If it's not, then look at the created date and add the number of days until it's due, and we get our date. So this next bit, so just as an example here, if I would like to make it due a week earlier, then I go and manually set that, and it changes the due date. But if that's empty, we just get the automated one. Now with the priority, that is a little bit more complicated. So if we have a look here, we can see if there is anything in this priority upgrade field, then it runs. If not, then it just puts nothing in there. If there is something in the priority property itself, then that overwrites it, and we use the same styling that we're going to use lower down. So I'll show you that in a minute. But then ultimately what we need to do is we look at the number of days until it's due. And so we get that number, and then we use that number. So if the days until due is less than 0, then it's overdue. But then if the days until due are greater than our priority upgrade days property, then it's low. And if they're equal to or less than the priority upgrade days property, then it becomes high. And so that's what allows the customer to say, on a sort of per task basis, I want my priorities to upgrade or downgrade like this. So you can see here, we've said it's 14 days from the date it's created. So we got August. And then at the 7-day mark, we want you to bump it up. So if we change this and we made this the 14-day mark, then because it's today, you would see, it jumps up. And so, like the client, let's change the created date to a week ago. And so now it's high because at the 7-day mark, it jumps up. If it was created a day after that, I think it might be the next day actually. Yeah, it would still be low. So when it hits that 7-day mark, then it jumps. Anyway, so that's like a pretty good example of how the client can sort of get the best of both worlds, both the automation and the manual. And then just in terms of the interface, I want to show you. So like many of the tasks in the system won't use this stuff. They won't be automated tasks. They'll be tasks where someone said, hey, this person called, could you follow them up or whatever? And so these properties will be empty. Now, in the way I've set this up, I've set it so that these only show up if they've got something in them. And so that's why I've got this, if the priority upgrade days exists, then run all this, otherwise leave it empty, because it means that these properties stay empty until they're actually needed. And so we can give people a user interface that just looks like a normal task system, and they can come in and set those things and it all just works. But they don't have to. They're not confronted with it all the time, so it's not so confusing. Anyway, whole bunch of stuff there. Really keen to hear if, that's something that you would think would be useful, if that's a problem you've tried to solve before. I've solved it in a bunch of different ways over time, but yeah, that's what these guys are getting.